Hello YouTube, this is my May 2021 poll plans in the city of Final Fantasy Opera Omnia Global. I'm going to be doing an overview with my perspective, having played this period in the Japanese version, highlighting some gotchas, and outlining my poll plan. Before I continue though, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this video where you can, and drop a comment about your plans for the month. Subscribing and liking helps me a ton, and only 50% of my viewers on average are subscribed, so please help me out. I play both JP and Global, and I upload constantly. I'll read all the comments, so don't be afraid to ask anything. I also do monthly JP retrospectives on content right after it finishes to give me my initial takes, and I'll link that as well so y'all can see how I felt about the content after it was fresh and how my opinions have possibly changed since then. Everything here is my opinion and impression. Don't take it as fact, please. I screw up all the time. Double check your sources. I'm fallible. Seek out different points of view and aim to understand them all and where they're coming from and whether or not they are credible. Opening thoughts for the month. Well, this month definitely has some sketchy / restrictive fights. Notably Mod's Lufenia, which fortunately gets memed. Terra's Lufenia, which limits a lot. Garland's Lufenia is mostly delay, and let me think. Desch's Lufenia is pretty toxic, and then we have Transcendence at the end of the month, but I'll go deeper into that later. This is the tail end of the We Do Not Want You to Use Holy wave, which wraps up after 9's Lost Chapter next month, and a lot of these fights this month are launch immune, so Square Enix Airlines has unfortunately been grounded temporarily. Fortunately, they've decided to spice this month up a little with some Abyss and some unknown banners, so that's pretty cool. Looking forward to that. But let's get into content now. Act 3, Chapter 2, Part 1. First off, we have the featured character here, the new one, the updated one, the well-deservedly hype one, Terra. Terra's getting a rework. She's getting more uses of both skills. I'm only going to talk about the plus version of her skills since those are the only ones you're going to be seeing practically unless something goes horribly wrong. Her skill 1 gets more hits with 80% splash, and her skill 2 also gets more hits, and it becomes 2 AoE Brave plus HP, single target HP attacks, and it has refund in between. Her LD, including her boards, gives a double split HP attack with refund in the middle, and it has 0 action delay, so Terra can act right afterwards. Think kind of like Lightning's LD, and it grants her a 4-turn buff and gets her to 5 stacks of her overhead if she wasn't there already. It makes every skill use free while she has this buff up, and doesn't increase the turn count, and removes all action delay while the buffs are up, which means in practice she's getting 4 consecutive turns. Think Lightning after using her LD, or Ultimecia after using her EX. She just gets to go consecutively. It buffs her magic attack and HP damage, specifically HP damage of 30%, which is pretty big, and she gets refund after she takes a turn based on Brave damage dealt, not HP damage dealt. Also, the overhead doesn't go down. So the magic overhead that she gets that makes her head the plus version doesn't decrease while she's in this state. So you're good there. Don't have to worry about not using your plus versions. And this is only, however, when the buff is up. Think of it like a mini burst period. And her limit breaks give her attack and Brave self-gained overflow for her self-batteries, which are pretty important. It also buffs the overhead that she gets from her base kit with a plus 20 Brave damage up. Her call is her skill 2, and it inflicts a small speed down, no caller effect, and her LD call is the same double HP attack with refund in between like the regular, and the caller gets an effect that gives a magic attack up plus refund based on Brave damage done, just like her LD buff does. It's functionally similar to Camelot's LD call, but better for units with lots of Brave hits who are magic. Lastly, her burst. For the finisher, she does a single target double HP attack. I have no clue what her optimal burst rotation is, by the way, so stay tuned in the community for that, because I got no clue. But the effect for party is stolen and gain Brave overflow up. Everybody gets 20% HP damage up when attacking a broken target or breaking one, normal stuff, and it raises the HP damage cap, and the whole party gets refund based on Brave hits like Terra's LD. As for her high armor, she's getting the damage one. She's a damage dealer, obviously she's going to want this, so pick it up. The next character getting an update is Bosch. His LD attack now turns into a double split HP attack with refund in between, and it batteries the party afterwards. It also heals the party based on damage dealt, and the overheal becomes Brave. His LD buff gets stronger as well. He gets a self-Brave damage up, so he hits harder. It provides a Brave regen to the party based on their current HP, which is interesting, and the buff is also extended by 2 turns for a bit of the longevity. As for calls, his base call is a skill 1 AoE Brave Shade with 2-turn taunt, and the caller gets Brave damage resist. And the LD call, it's again the double HP attack that heals the party with overheals going to Brave. Again, just 2 turns of taunt, and the caller gets Brave damage resist, and the party gets HP based Brave regen. His high armor is support, which is okay. You could buff his attack aura a little, I guess. It's not super impactful, and you could definitely live without it. Additionally, Porum Vayne, Rydia, and Vanille are getting your 80s. Vanille's RF Spear will finally be farmable. If you're not aware, it's a 40% chance to dispel, which can be situationally good. Vayne's got the Brave Damage Spear, Porum's got the HP Regen Spear, which can be useful down the line, and then Rydia has just the basic damage one. So these are all right. I guess Vanille's Call could be helpful too if you're stuck on Beatrix's Lost Chapter or something. Or maybe Arceus. Now on to what I'm thinking. Terra, first off, she deserves a lot of the hype she's getting, but she may not be enjoyable for everyone. I had never personally had her burst, but even if I did, similar to my situation with Noctis, I don't think I would have used her much. For folks who like no boss turns and stuff in that realm, she's the go-to. She's definitely the killer there. Please stop calling her Magic Lightning though. Terra has no delays, no rebreaks, and she brings AoE damage. They might have more differences than similarities. Please, it hurts. Combining her with off-turn follow-ups like Yang, Cloud of Darkness Burst in the future, Noctis, other things get really silly really fast because those consecutive turns she can guarantee she's going over and over, and if you chain it with her burst, you can just blow bosses up pretty quickly. She takes huge advantage of friend burst effect as well, again, because of those consecutive turns. They're really good. So for example, stacking in like a friend Garland or a friend Noctis or a friend whoever, honestly, and then going into her burst phase and then having her just LD continuously, and you got other people in the background doing damage as well. It's just ridiculous. And this doesn't really ever get countered until the first thing that I can think of is Divine Alexander, where you get punished if the boss doesn't get enough turns, or maybe just in general if bosses need to get turns for an orb, say it's like a sap orb or something, then obviously Terra needs to slow down and let the boss get a turn. But if they don't need to get many turns and you can satisfy the orb without that, Terra is just a monster. She's got insane future longevity. I think people are still pulling off Terra runs in JP currently, so yeah, definitely worth the hype. But not for everyone. Like I said, I'd never used her a lot. But for some people's channels, you're gonna see just Terra nonstop for a very, very long time. As for Bosch, he got decent upgrades, but he's still Bosch. You know, he does the whole HP redirect thing. His damage isn't great, but his auras are up there. He can finally use calls now, which is very welcome, and his LD boards don't catapult him into newfound relevance, but they're certainly a nice touch-up. He's not there to do damage, but he does help the team not get killed, and he fulfills the tank role if you really need it. Am I pulling? You guys should know the answer. Terra is a 2-week synergy, so yeah, gonna get the LD. Hedge against if I get the burst if I pull alongside the other cycle. Like I said though, I'm not a fan of her gameplay, so I don't see myself using her much, but if I get burst tokens over time from challenges, from just having the synergy unit, that's always good. If I do get her burst miraculously, that would also be nice, but I probably won't touch her after she's done being boosted. Good luck to the fans of the character and or the kit, because you have a monster on your hands. As for Bosch's LD, I already have it, so I'll be LD boarding him and leaving it at that. No more pulling on the other banner because we're not getting any free pulls. If you weren't aware though, Terra does rerun on a triple burst banner featuring Noctis and Shantoto. I do have Noctis and Shantoto's burst, so if I don't get her burst during her cycle, then I will gun for it there, just for a chance at more burst tokens potentially. And Bosch also reruns with the recently featured Golbez Burst Plus and Transcendence 6, and he's getting high armor plus there. Don't worry about that though, and it doesn't catapult Bosch to any newfound relevance, so if you're in need of a tank right now, I guess you could grab Bosch. As for the fight, this one is interesting. It's the Humbabas, everyone's favorite enemy. The orb is to deal non-elemental magic damage, and guess who that's selling? They're immune to the following debuffs: attack down, defense down, speed down, eye brave down, and brave down. So it's pretty much all stat debuffs, I think, and paralyze and HP silence. I think that's most of Kefka's debuffs. Yeah, tragic. Except I guess Kefka could use blind, I think. But anyways, it's range resist and it's unlaunchable. So this month in general is full of non-launchable fights. So sorry, Square Enix Airlines, the economy's not being good to you. You don't want to bring elements here unless you're a Galaxy Brain, which I'll touch on later. Again, they're the regular annoying Humbabas with some extra spice. At certain points, they're gonna cleanse, I believe, and frame their own turns, and I think you need to take 8 actions in a row to calm them down. Otherwise you get a brave plus HP with full dispel, and this is where Terra kicks in. If you LD away and then high turn rate and then prevent them from getting turns, they chill out and they don't blow you up and dispel you. I think it can be worked around, these consecutive actions, with additional abilities and call abilities, but don't quote me on that. I need to be tested out. High turn rates and frame speed down should be fire here too. Below half HP though, this is why I'm saying not to bring elements unless you're a Galaxy Brain. They start countering any elemental attacks they receive with a big brave plus HP. They dispel you and they delay you 6 turns. However, this is dodgeable, so you can potentially abuse it, like Galuf, for example, maybe, or maybe some Kamari shenanigans. I don't know. You might be able to run Remu stun and cheese this, but I'm not sure of the details, so stay tuned for that in the community. If you do bring elements and you're not doing a galaxy burning strategy, you will get countered. So just keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, this fight is plenty manageable. Just bring magic damage dealers. Obviously, Terra is the prime choice here. I think Sarah's going to eat here too. Who am I running? Terra, Sarah, and Arciella probably, because I ain't run Arciella in a brick. And stacking Arciella and Sarah's aura should be funny for Terra. Maybe it won't run Terra. Maybe I'll run like Emperor or Ulti or something, but Sarah's frame poison is still going to land, and Arciella's 2 frames to stick as well, so Sarah can keep her HP and brave damage up conditionals. So that should be just funny to see Terra blowing up. And Arciella's speed down is going to be super helpful. And no brave games on the Humbabas means I'm less likely to get blown up as well. Ulti, Hope, Emperor are good choices for the orb. Kefka, but 4 out of 6 of his debuffs don't work, so plan around that. Should be pretty straightforward in a fun fight. Hopeful to see what the community comes up with this one. Amidatelions Lost Chapter. Something to note here is that this is the first Lost Chapter that is starting the trend of double LD banners. So all Lost Chapters from now on will have the returning LD along with a new one, which is pretty nice if you're looking to maximize the luck on your pulls for getting a single LD. As usual, multiple LDs on the banner does not change the odds of getting a specific LD, but it does increase the odds of getting one. So something to think about. Deuce is the headliner here, I should say. She's not getting a rework, unfortunately. I'll go into that later, why I think that. But her LD is new. It gives her a burst heal and a battery into 100% AoE with refund afterwards, and it gives her a new overhead that gives her granted buff extension, so every time she grants a buff, it'll last longer, gives her better longevity. She also gets an aura that gives the party 30% magic brave damage up plus 10% HP damage up, and this HP damage up is for all attacks, not just magic attacks. Stolen and gained overflow, like every support seems to be getting nowadays, and small attack up with some HP regen on the side, which is pretty nice. And she gets a free skill afterwards as well. Just something to note, I'm not sure if it's best to use the free skill on C65 for permanent uptime, but that might be useful. Just something to think about, because I don't think Deuce really has skill problems. That being said, she gets a ton of M-Brave and attack from her limit breaks, which she really needed, and she gets a better Brave Plus and HP Plus, and she also gets the overhead at at quest start. So if you get her LD boards, you'll get that. Very beneficial. Her call abilities, now she has level 80, is her skill 2, and it buffs the party with generic and magic attack up, and her LD call, same as LD, burst heal into 100% AoE, and the effect is that the party gets a magic brave damage up 30%. And let me go back to the call ability. It's just a generic magic attack up. It's not an effect, so the buff can be pushed off or it can apply depending on what you roll. Anyways, lastly, her high armor is support, so she gets the 5% attack up with the HP damage cap. Like I always say, HP damage caps are better for support to give party HP damage up. I'm just a little bit sad that she didn't get encouragement since she batteries so much. It's not super needed, but it can be effective. Definitely grab it if you plan to use Deuce often. But if you don't plan to run her a lot, I wouldn't pick this up per usual. And Amidatelion is the other LD on this banner getting an upgrade, and she is getting buff start with 1 stack of the LD buff, more gained overflow on LD use, and longer buff duration. Not much else. This is also the returning LDs in these Lost Chapters aren't getting much generally, and Amidatelion really shows this off. Skill 1 is regular call ability, does damage, and it does the action delay down debuff if you don't already have the EX+. Otherwise, debuff start takes care of things, and the LD call is just like the LD, set AoE, set to 0, and delete turns. Again, be careful, debuff start. This LD call is situationally useful if you're prepared to not have to deal with the insane amount of debuffs it drops. Having that debuff, or the delay utility is pretty solid to have in your pocket. High armor, Ami already had the debuff armor, but if you didn't know, now you know. Well, what do I think? Well, Deuce got decent upgrades. She leans harder into her niche of making magic attack characters, nuke. Now, I think she has like 100% magic attack up in total, and then 30% magic brave damage up, which is pretty solid, I'd say. On paper, her buffs are really, really good in magic teams, and she turns people, like I said, nuclear, and her roll coverage is wide now. She heals as well. Sadly, I think her base kit is still tragic, and I don't think the LD did enough to bandage it. But she can just sit there and be valuable as an aura bot, which is the easiest thing in the world to build around. Personally, I pulled her in JP, and I never found myself using her, not even as a call. except maybe like one off, but she's definitely viable. Not a horrible pull. I just wish they would have given her a bit more personally. Maybe instant turn rate, free skill, or free turn on skill 1, and maybe skill 2 doing a bit more damage, but she's an Nero bot, so I can't complain too much, like I said. And then on to Ami. Ami got next to nothing. Having her as a call for debuffs and clutch deletes is nice, but still does Ami things at the end of the day, and is valuable in the right setup, but debuff cluttering as of late is really a pain, so there is an opportunity cost. I've talked to a bunch of people who bought into the initial Amidatelion hype and then ended up not enjoying because of the delete and then the debuff spam. So take that into consideration if you're trying to pick her up this time around. Personally, I value Deuce a bit more on Ami on this banner, personally, but Ami is still plenty viable. Am I pulling? Well, I think I'm going to throw tickets to try and land both LDs. I have a little bit at this moment, or a lot of it. I think around 500-600. I've never had Ami's LD, and Deuce can be situationally useful. I think I'd stop after Ami's LD personally because I'm semi-interested in that LD call. But again, having that delete and delay, gravity call on demand and delete should prove handy in some situations, and I love to have that under my belt. As for reruns, Deuce does rerun with Vivi when he gets LD boards on Act 3, Chapter 4, Part 2 during X Death's burst cycle, and she gets Heimer Plus there. Doesn't catapult her into any newfound relevance, so if you're interested in Deuce, this is the time to get her, otherwise she'd just be consolation later, assuming you don't have Vivi and you're pulling on that banner. And Ami has yet to rerun at this point in JP. As for the fight, a quick note, I don't usually talk about challenge quests, but this one is strangely like tanky / tricky. I don't know why. I recall there being a different mechanics and more brave reduction on the challenge quest, which is odd. So this one might throw people for a loop, so just be aware of that. Anyways, the Lufenia, it's Earth and Holy Absorb, it's range resist, and the orb that you need to fulfill is HP regen, which is hilariously easy to satisfy. We have so many HP regen characters, including a stupidly broken Gladio. It was really good here. Same as the Chaos, you take a turn and then you get delayed by 1. It's actually a bit easier this time, since when they shell up and you break them, their defense and reductions drop. So instant breakers like an Enchanted Trey or Gabronth can serve well, so can gravity characters like Ami, Edward, etc. Just breaking them, and then I don't think this fight is too bad, honestly. Gladio is probably one of the MVPs for this fight, again, for his HP regen and protecting the party, because Gladio getting delayed is really good, because he's not burning as many turns and he's getting more counters off. You can satisfy this with the HP regen sphere, actually, like the farmable ones from Terra's co-op, so if you got someone with a C-Spear, maybe if you want to throw a C-Spear on your Ami, just to make it so Ami gives like a 1% HP regen, you're probably not taking much HP damage from this fight anyways. So that could probably fulfill the orb as well. Not terribly difficult. Terra is obviously good with their consecutive turns, and Deuce will fulfill the orb obviously and make Terra hit harder if you decide to run her. Pretty straightforward, definitely one of the more relaxed fights of this month. Who am I running? Well, it depends on who I pull. If I get Ami, I will definitely use her just because I haven't done it before. Sarah is 500% doing in my party, however. Maybe Pinello, if I get Deuce, maybe. It's pretty variable here. Definitely running Sarah, but otherwise, I mean, maybe I just run Gladio again, Gladio Squall. Tons of options here. Glad to see what people will come up with per usual. Next up, we got Act 3, Chapter 2, Part 2, and Mog is the new character. He's a ranged damage dealer with a ton of utility. He's got some decent party auras, but nothing special. Slight overflow, brave damage up, attack, and brave boost, etc. And he enchants himself with water and imperils water/thunder. He's got party HP regen, enemy speed down on top of that, so definitely a decent toolbox of random stuff. Skill 1 alternates between an OK 50% splash attack and a batter one with 2 HP attacks. And skill 2 is a split AoE that refreshes his overhead, which provides water enchant to himself, party regen, and follow-ups. Again, it's self-enchant, not party enchant. That's a pretty big difference. And he's got a conditional follow-up. If the party is debuffed, then he cleanses into an attack. Otherwise, the follow-up has a chance to confuse. And there's some battery on both of them, I believe. The EX is a single attack. There really should have been multiple attacks, like Karen. Party battery and a single 100% AoE. And this buff is where the party no overflow brave damage buff comes from, but nobody really cares about the minutia. And his LD burst heals after it burst heals and it gets a free skill afterwards. It refreshes the overhead for much longer. His other stuff gets buffed, the regen for the party, enemy speed down, the follow-ups get stronger as well, and the confuse has a better chance to proc, and he gets buff start on the overhead as well. Regular call is his skill 1, slight party attack and brave buff and enemy speed down. His LD call is a burst heal damage with no actual effect for the party. And his high armor is unity armor, which is to help the party break brave damage cap. Since he doesn't actually enchant, I'm not sure how useful this would be, but just good to know. What do I think? Well, this is the one of the characters I know least about, and I hate talking about minute details of kits, so don't take my short overview as truth, please. I'm confident I probably missed something or said something wrong, so double check. Anyways, I haven't finished Final Fantasy VI, and what I did play, I never unlocked this guy. Apparently, he's pretty faithful to the kit, I don't know. So, but he's got a hilarious amount of utility, and I've seen him be useful for a long while as the poster child for 3rd slot utility. Cleanse, stun, HP regen, brave regen, decent auras, I think. I think the math adds up to be in the 60s for attack and embryo, but don't quote me. Battery, AoE range damage, burst heal, self-imperil, enchant, aura speed down. That's a lot. And while he doesn't exactly do all of it well, he does do it. So he's definitely viable for a long time. There's more HP regen orbs in the future, along with cleanse orbs, among others. He can help out a ton there. Don't let the lack of what YouTube representation fool you. He's plenty viable. Am I pulling though? Nope. No attachment, no need for the utility. His loot mania being cheesable doesn't do much to sell him well. Other characters I'm interested in can fulfill his utility. Again, don't get me wrong, definitely solid to grab, but I am not feeling it. Mog LD does rerun with Sid range, which is probably going to make him even less attractive in GL because everyone and their mom is pulling Sid range except for the hipsters. For the fight, why even talk about it? You'd be better off just using Yuffie here to meme the fight, assuming they don't fix it, and I'm praying they don't fix it, because why would they? That'd be so lame. Oh my god, I don't really want to fight this fight. It's too cancer. Yuffie's skill 2 throws back their AC poison and kills them because they're not immune to it. It scales well against them for some reason. The fight is really just cancer raids without doing that. So hats off to the people willing to do it legit, because I really don't think I will. Why waste my time? Not even gonna bother uploading, because why be Yuffie cheese number 865? That's just a waste of my time. I legit have no idea what this fight's like, except I know you gotta do water damage, I think. I don't know. Who am I running? Yuffie. I'm not gonna bother recording, who cares? However, a quick note about the Abyss. There is an Abyss, I believe, between Mog and Garland's Burst Raid, which is up next. And my working theory right now is I think the Abyss might work to sell Mog because his own fight's a joke. My prediction is it's going to be something with blue spears to sell him and Final Fantasy VI. Maybe I'll be able to flex my Aranea and, I don't know, my lock, because blue daggers, you know, whatever. Let's see if that prediction pans out. I hope it does, because it should be good. Now for the big hype of the month, Garland. Ooh, boy, Garland, he's getting LD boards, baby. His LD becomes a double HP attack, his overhead lasts longer, and his granted buffs get +1, which functionally means he gets 3 turns of his delay buff instead of the usual 2. It didn't have upkeep issues after his LD came out, but even more so now. He's just gonna be delaying every turn. He gets an extra 10% brave damage up for overhead stack up to 50%, and his follow-up becomes he gets a new follow-up, I should say, that becomes a double brave plus HP every time after he does an HP attack. It's pretty strong. His calls kind of suck because they don't delay, because he doesn't have delay buff start. But his first call is skill 2, and it gives up to 30% attack and embrave each per turn you take. And his LD call again, it's an aura defense / speed down up to 20% defense down and 30% speed. Not really top pick and no delay. Seriously, just very disappointing. His burst, however, is the real good stuff. It's great for delays during the burst phase for one, and the effect is stack based, and the stack goes up every time a party member acts, and it resets when the enemy gets a turn. It's perfect for burst stacking and summon, drop the Garland friend in here, make him do his burst attack, and then have your party member go into burst. Garland is the premium friend unit for a while now. At max stacks, however, it's 50% brave damage up, 30% HP damage up. Already like crazy. 40% brave damage cap up, stolen overflow up 40%. This is utterly ridiculous. He is truly a godly friend unit. Come in, delay him, go nuts with the damage at 5 stacks. Insane. If you got Garland's burst, keep him up as a friend unit for a very long time. His high armor is the damage one. It's already existed, but if you didn't know, get this, please. On the other banner, we have Seven, who is unfortunately a bit disappointing in my eyes. She gets a new LD, it's a double HP attack with splash, and it brings her snakebite stats up to 3, and she gets a new buff. It's pretty decent, actually. Gets a party overflow attack up, and party brave and HP damage up, and she gets a single use HP plus after using his LD. It's a single target, brave plus HP with splash, and it gets a temporary buff called Capture Whip. It does a follow-up after anyone acts, which can be friend or foe. It unfortunately doesn't continually go off in burst phase. You can't abuse it like Kryl or Yang in the future. And it's attack based brave damage reduction, kind of like X-Death, and it's an AoE attack, and the buff also provides speed down 10%, attack down 40%, party brave damage up 20%. So she's got a theoretical high damage phase of 40% brave damage up for 5 turns for the party. Okay, her call ability is her skill 2, and it double taps assuming she's purple with debuff start, so it can attack the one with snakebite up. But I think the debuff application on her debuff start is random, so this kind of, you don't even know if you're going to guarantee the double attack, which really sucks unless it's single target, I guess. And her LD call is, I'm going to stretch here and say that it's comparable to Jack's LD call, sorta, because snakebite is 50% defense down, and the effect on the LD call is 20% brave damage up plus overflow. So you could put this on someone slow and benefit, I suppose, but snakebite only being single target kind of sucks, so really still not as good. Her high armor is the debuff armor, so you have a functional 70% defense down single target when she's on the team, which is good, I guess. What do I think overall, though? Garland got the juice. That follow-up amps his damage to acceptable levels, and all the good things about him are still there. Constant delays, aura defense and speed down, and decent damage. Although he's not a primary damage dealer, he's mostly there for his utility, but he does okay damage as well. His burst aura, however, brings him to a whole new level. That burst phase is nuts. At the same time, it's not necessary though. I never had his burst in JP, and I did fine even in Transcendence, but he's a stellar friend unit like I mentioned earlier, and good in the party for crowd control. 7, she's a decent aura bot. Single target defense down is cool. She got some stuff, and the LD buffs are nice, but in my opinion, it's not enough, especially in the face of, we just got Sarah, and Sarah honestly kind of outclasses her, except for the defense down aspect, and I guess it could be argued that 7 can do more brave damage and attack on the team than Sarah, but I think Sarah's positives outweigh 7's positives, so I can't really recommend 7. And on that note, I already have Garland's LD. Am I pulling? 7 doesn't look like a great look, honestly. I think she deserves a bit more. Again, either a stronger LD or a rework, or both. I pulled her in JP, but I actually never used her. I think I only just recently used her as a call, maybe. I'm skipping this one. Sorry, she's second best Type 0 girl. Maybe I'll get you going for Orin in the future, but I'm not holding my breath. If I don't get Garland's burst in this cycle, I'd pity it on Faris's banner, but I'll explain that later. Reruns in the future, just to be aware of. Garland reruns when he gets burst plus alongside Rose's LD, and 7 reruns along Orin's LD, which is gaining hype traction. And on the secondary, Titus BT banner with RCLSG rerun. So it's I think it's one banner, it's Titus LD and Aerith LD, and on the other banner, it's RCL LD and 7's LD. Not a super attractive banner at that point. Not doing her any more favors, but just by rerunning twice already. As for the fight, it's the Kaiser Behemoth, the one that is from 13, I believe, and it stands up eventually and gets stronger. It's Holy Dark Absorb, sorry Cecil. It's Fire Weak, probably to sell Ignis, who's coming in between. And it's immune to Paralyze, Embrave and Eyebrave Down, Rip Belial, and Imperil. There's no launch here either. And the delay orb is plus 15 on a delay, I believe, to sell Garland. And the Warrior Light mannequin has its LD attack, and it opens with that as well. So if it goes off, be prepared to deal with it. Either cleanse the lock off, or actually it might kill you if you're not careful. So just, if you can prevent the Warrior Light mannequin from beginning a turn, do so. Probably most will no turn this dude because it's just toxic when it gets turns. It's usual Kaiser Behemoth stuff. It stands up eventually and it cleanses, and then you gotta hit it even harder. The Warrior Light Mannequin comes back eventually, but I don't know the condition. But take him out as soon as possible. Don't get nuked. There is a magic counter waltz on all fours, so unless you do enough damage before it stands up via a friend unit, do not bring magic. It's just not a good idea. And the Imperial immune, you just mostly just brave damage and defense down are the ways you want to amp up your damage here. Who am I running? I'm thinking Garland, Aranea, and Ramza. There's buffs on this team, plus debuffs, and delays should make this cake. Drop the Jack call in the second phase with RNA's Vital Crusher up, and Garland's defense down, and Rams has got the defense down and the attack up. Oh, we're going to be doing all kinds of damage. Yeah, should make this cake. Not a terrible fight by any means. Next up, we got Ignis's LD. This LD is not attached to any kind of event. Well, it might be attached to Abyss, or at least sold there. So stay tuned for that in Global. But in JP, it was just a banner, and in between, kind of like Sarah and Aerith. But the LD is a Brave Gain into an AoE, 100% AoE attack, I should say. And he drops a Fire Imperil debuff, which is 10% HP damage up and a small poison, which is kind of random. Maybe it's better lore-wise. and the poison and the HP, excuse me, and the debuff is applied for 4 turns on LD use. He also gets a new buff that buffs party attack slightly, it gives overflows, and it enchants the party with fire. Very nice. It also buffs party weak damage slightly, so you're hitting a little harder on top of the enchant. Every buff he does now is extended by 2 turns for better longevity, and every time he attacks someone, he drops a debuff, kind of like Aerith. Again, his call ability, regular one, is the skill 1, burst heal, and the LD call is the same LD, same attack, it just hits a little less hard, and it drops a fire imperil for 2 turns, I think. And the caller gets party fire enchant plus slight weak damage up, which is very nice, especially on someone that is slow. His high armor is support. HP damage up in this kit justifies higher HP cap somewhat, but not super crucial in my opinion. You can live without it. What do I think about Ignis? He had good upgrades. Enchanted HP damage up for the party is very good to buff the output. Granted, buff extension means he's lasting longer and can spam a bit more situationally. I'm assuming he will come with the second Abyss since there's not a hard date, so expect some red dagger shenanigans is my guess. He's got even more roll coverage too, so much utility and no buff slots, which is always appreciated. From what I used of him in JP, I came to appreciate his high turn rate stance now that he didn't burn out as fast, and he's really good for Transcendence too. I used him in his call and future Lufenias, Divine Shiva being a standout, same with Vivi's chapter Lufenia that needed fire damage. Definitely all around solid, can't really go wrong with Ignis. He's not super hype, but he's definitely justifies himself in your party. And I think he's synergy for Desch's Lost Chapter and Garland's raid as well. So if you're looking for some easier challenge quest completions, he might be the right option. But don't quote me on the Garland part or the Desch LC part. Definitely double check. Am I pulling? Yeah. I think he's very valuable in and out of the party. I'll probably be using tickets. I should have enough, probably in the 500-ish range by around Ignis. If you're looking for a rerun in the future, he does rerun with Lions LD during X Death's burst cycle where he gets high armor plus. But if you're looking to use Ignis, this is definitely his prime, but he definitely, again, a solid pickup. Desch's Lost Chapter. Pajama Suit Boy comes back. But the important character here is Yang, so let's talk about him first. He gets a rework and his skills get better. He gets the usual more hits and overflow. I don't even know if he has more hits, but nobody cares about his skills. But one of the big things about his rework is his C50 gets touched up to make his counter a Brave plus HP attack, which is pretty nifty actually. However, his rework pales in comparison to the power of his LD. This is the important part. He gets a double HP attack on his LD and a new buff that gives party gain and stolen overflow up and party physical attack up for some reason. Now the party can be broken as well. And after the party member attacks an enemy, Yang does a follow-up. Think about how like Noctis Burst follows up after party attacks. Same thing here. It's a Brave Gain into a split HP attack and he refunds afterwards. I think the LD buff only lasts for, what, 2 turns? But this is very abusable with turn stealers. I'll elaborate a bit. His call ability, skill 1, base called, I should say, is just damage, and his LD call is more damage, and it makes the party unbreakable while the effect is up, but it's only 1 turn, so attack, high armor, perfect to optimize his output. So you definitely, if you plan on running Young consistently, you want that. Desch, Pajama Boy. He is not the important part of this Lost Chapter, but he does get LD boards. His double HP attack gets more hits on the second one, and he hits harder. And he gets more weakness damage up for the party, and he now has party HP damage reduction, which is cool, playing into his defensive roles. His call abilities are skill 1, it gives the party magic brave damage reduction. And his LD call has the RNG effect of 20% paralyzed after an enemy turn, otherwise it'll just apply the defense down. So kind of just replicating his LD buff in the RNG part of it, I should say. His high armor, which already existed, but if you weren't aware, it's Unity, which is decent. Since he busts your brave damage output hard, you're more likely to hit that cap, and Desch can help you go beyond. What do I think? Yang is silly. Why did they load his follow-up but not 7? I am flabbergasted. I actually don't even know if I didn't know it had buffs beyond the follow-up and no break, so that was another pleasant surprise while I was looking over this stuff. Everyone will mention his abuse with constant turn units like Terra. It really, and it is worth mentioning, it really is wild how abusive combos like that can be with the right turn manipulation and units. Personally, that's not really my thing, but it's going to be a popular combo for a while because it definitely just steamrolls content for a long time. Desch didn't get much, but he already had a lot of good stuff. More HP damage reduction to lean into his defensive niche is nice. He makes people hit harder too, as always, especially with the increased weakness damage up. Definitely not as impactful as before because his damage is sad. Just split AoE 4 hits on most of his skills. Not huge, but he's not there for damage in the first place, and he can still keep up. Am I pulling? Nope. I don't like Yong's playstyle. Also, he's hideous. Turnstealers and no boss turners will love this though, so definitely grab him. He can be used like this for a while, so you can get a lot of bang out of your buck with the right setup. He does rerun in the future alongside Barrett's LD for Transcendence 4, and he gets his high armor plus there. This is during Yuna's burst cycle, and Desch also reruns during Yuna's burst cycle. So if you're not too interested, I mean, they're going to be far out of their prime at that point, like I always say. But just something, if you're going for collection, that's just something to be aware of. As for the fight, it's pretty toxic. This is probably my least favorite fight this month, and I'd say it's probably a bottom 5 fight for me of all time in JP. Because I didn't run the Terra Yang combo, and there's gonna be goofballs saying like, "Oh wow, this got decimated," and they're gonna be using Terra Yang or whatever. Ignoring that, I'm gonna talk about it a little, but it's pretty cancerous, in my opinion, if you don't do that. The orb is to deal AoE HP damage, which suits off-turn Yang pretty well. Obviously, sells them very hard. It's Thunder Weak and Water Absorb, and they stance, dance, and cleanse in between. The magic state reduces Brave Gain, and physical state raises their defense. So depending on your team, you want to keep them in one or the other. Let's see, what else? At 50%, they cleanse again, and then everything they do is HP attacks. I think they ignore HP damage as well, so sorry, Desch, your new toy cannot be abused. I think the orb goes away 50% though, so at that point, it's just a matter of staying alive and not getting blown up. It gets so nasty. I do not have fond memories of this fight. The HP requirement is hilariously low at 1.5k HP. It will catch people off guard, so please watch out. Eldnars can lock it down sufficiently, but nobody likes using Eldnars. You can no boss turn it, excuse me, with Terra Yang shenanigans. So if you're looking for a quick out, I guess that's the way. Letting them act as little as possible is certainly the path to least resistance, because this boss sucks. Who am I running? In JP, I ran Squall, Celes, and Paladin Cecil, because we do get to use Holy this fight, and I barely scraped by the HP requirement just because we were getting nuked near the end. Now I'm in global, I'm thinking Paladin Cecil, Aranea, and Garland, because I will have Garland's burst. Well, we'll have Garland's burst at this point? No, because Faris won't be out. Well, I'll figure something out, but Aranea is actually very good for this fight because she's got the AoE damage and the delays, and Vital Crusher helps stomp them out when they get tanky. So we'll see how that goes. Lastly, we have Transcendence 2 and Faris. Faris is getting a rework, albeit a minor one, unfortunately. She gets Splash on her skill 1, and that's really just it. 50% Splash, okay. No more hits. And she gets Inherent Element and Overflow on skill 2, which is good for guaranteeing she'll always hit weak damage. Her C50 now buffs parties I Brave and M Brave. Okay, kind of random, but acceptable. Her skill 2 attack down and defense down additionally get buffed to be 70%, which is very high. Very nice. 70% defense down, oh yeah. Her LD is a triple single target HP attack with refund in between all attacks and splashes afterwards, and it drops an LD debuff. It's a new one, so now Faris has 5 debuffs. It's a lightning, water, wind, and peril with 20% brave damage up, and it has special utility of setting enemy brave to 0 after every turn they take. So if they do a giant brave gain near the end of their turn, it's just going to take it all away, and it goes nicely with their overhead that attacks at their enemy turn, so you can break people pretty easily now. She also gets debuff start with her LD, assuming you max it out, which why wouldn't you? That's goofy. And the attack defense down 70%, which is huge. Embrave 30% poison, and her LD debuff for 4 turns. That's 5 debuff slots off the bat if Faris is in the party, and using LD applies them for 8. Her call ability is her skill 2, which dispels and debuffs, and she has debuff start, it puts them out obviously. And the LD call, it's just the attack, but it also has debuff start, which is nice. Unfortunately, the LD call only applies the debuffs for 4 turns. Both calls, like I said, trigger the debuff start, which is not nice for a pocket defense down, potentially stacking up Jack's call. So if you put Jack's call and Faris's call up at the same time, that is a, what, 70 plus 50% defense? Is it? I actually still to this day do not know Jack's debuff numbers, but it's good. Just Depends on your team if you need those debuff slots. But anyways, she has Unity, high armor for some reason, even though she's a debuffer. I guess since her defense down is already so big, they didn't want to give her that extra 20%. Feels bad. More defense down would have been cool, I guess, but she makes everyone hit harder, so the Unity could be useful. I don't think this is huge for Faris, personally. Wow, I almost said Paris. Anyways, what do I think about Faris? I think she deserved a better rework, because her skills are still kind of tragic, but she is not there to do damage. Gotta remember that. 50% splash on skill 1 is not a good band-aid, and the overflow plus weakness on skill 2 just makes me sad. Doesn't feel like enough. Her debuffs are real good, but her output isn't. She generally gets relegated to a call. It's harder to justify her in the party, especially when she takes up all those slots. But that debuff start is very good with the Dispel utility as well. And I've used her so much as a call ability down the road for the defense down and brave damage up, stacking with Jack, among other things. It's just very decent. I have actually softened my stance on pulling for call abilities after Lufenia Plus, and I think she's pretty valuable. After being sold for Transcendence, obviously, which I'll elaborate on. Am I pulling? Yeah. I do like Faris ultimately. I'm not going to get her costume. I think her costume is whack. Her City outfit, her original in this game, is pretty clean. If I don't have Garland's Burst by this point, I'll go straight to Gem Burst Pity here. Like I said, I used her call ability so much I can't skip that value. Definitely has provided much value for me, but as in the party, yeah, not too stellar. But shout out to the people who are fans of Faris. You will enjoy. Now for the fight, quick note, everything in this tier is launch immune, so if you save Ramza or Cloud trying to use them here, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to wait a little longer. If you didn't use Cloud and you have his burst on the previous tier, by the way, what are you doing? Anyways, first, the left Crucible is the Lion Wolves. Lion is in the character, not Lion Wolves, like some weird fusion. Anyways, delay orb, +5 on delay. It's Earth and Holy Absorb, launch immune. This fight actually isn't very threatening. It's possible to no-turn this, or at least let the boss get very few turns. At some point, it gets super high magic brave damage reduction and turns red, and this cannot be overwritten by Imperil. At HP thresholds, for some reason, it kills its own ads and sends itself backwards, but then it ends up bringing them back. Weird. Overall, this fight is just pretty straightforward. There's one notorious video of Garland soloing this tier with his burst, but why would you do that? Seriously, I hope anyone who watches my videos is smart enough not to solo a Transcendence with the burst unit. That is so redundant. What are you saving? You're saving LD units that are very easily swappable? Stop it. It's just a weird flex. You're already burning a burst character. Everyone on the team is secondary. Please stop it. Don't bash your head against something silly like that. Please. Okay, anyways, make sure to bring a Black Crystal, which is really hard, a hard Garland sell. But otherwise, good characters to run here are Lightning, Y'shtola. I mean, obviously run Garland if you got him. He's definitely the MVP for this stage and the tier as a whole. I think he doesn't even need burst to be good here. Y'shtola has delay on stone and batteries through stuff, so the anti-magic parts aren't a big deal, and Earth Absorb just means someone else can re-break later. Aranea can delay. Some people even got Emperor through, even though he of the high magic resist, so it's definitely possible. A lot of options, but as long as you bring a Black Crystal and a delayer, you're generally good. I know Machina can fit that Black Crystal role well, but if Machina really is the next burst in JP, and you're running a burst alongside him, you might end up having 2 bursts in this tier, so that's something to consider. Obviously, down the road, you could just switch them around, but again, something to think about. Who am I running? So in JP, I did Onion Knight, Garland, and Aerith. Onion Knight had the burst, Garland had no burst. I still don't have Garland's burst at this point in JP. But Onion Knight swapped Garland back, and then Aerith sped everything down to stack alongside Garland's, so the boss barely got turns, and Onion Knight's burst phase helped everyone turn into a nuke, and this fight got pretty much clapped. This is probably one of the easier Lufenias we've had in a while. Since I plan to have Garland's burst this time around in Global, I'm going to run Garland, Ignis, and Reno. Ignis for buffs, Garland for delays and burst energy, and Reno for physical defense down. We're about to be doing all kinds of damage all fight. It's going to be great. High turn rate Ignis, so the boss gets less and less turns. Physical defense Reno, cap the whole fight. It should be cake. Now the fight on the right Crucible. We have the Sid Robot Chickens. Robot Chicken. It's weak to fire, lightning, weak and dark inherently, and it's ice resist, so Celas won't have as happy as a time. Unlaunchable again in case you forgot, and it's immune to HP silence. The orb is on weak damage, you get +1, so they expect constant weak damage and or off turn weak damage, which is a very hard sell for Faris. they get framed debuffs, including HP damage resist. So if they get a turn, you want to dispel that ASAP because that's just tanking your damage. Blocking all their buffs is valid provided they don't already have any up. Get rid of them if they are up, and just make sure you can hit weakness damage and just kill it. Another pretty much simple fight. These crucibles are a lot simpler compared to the past two. Good characters. Well, first off, bring a blue crystal. The side, again, like I said, is selling Faris. After that, it's mostly just simple strats of killing the boss over time and keeping yourself alive. I know the chickens have a nasty AoE attack, but it probably won't kill you if you're playing normally, like in Lufeni. I shouldn't have to point out basic skills at this point. It's possible to Terra Yang this and drop an enchant call on Yang and have it last the whole battle, which is silly but possible. And if you don't block out all the buffs, you need a dispel, or you can stop him from buffing with Aerith, actually. Faris, again, for the 5th time, is the MVP here. She is on the banner. She blocks out their buffs, she dispels, she hits weakness on everything, including off turns with her EX overhead. Arciella can dispel and stop their Brave gains, but they are immune to HP silence. Ignis, Kryl, Desch, Kuja are recent-ish enchanters to potentially use, or maybe you just use self-weakness characters like Mog, Reno, Lightning. The list is huge. A lot of options on this fight. Should be pretty straightforward. Who am I running? Well, in JP, I ran Faris, Ignis, and Squall. It was a perfect amount of 6 debuffs to block them out. Squall was the BT synergy, and we just crushed them. Weak damage, big damage, very simple. In global, I'm thinking maybe Faris, Desch, and Arden, because I don't like Arden's future in JP, so I might as well burn him here. And that's supreme weakness damage. Arden will do big numbers, and I actually haven't used him in a while, so it should be good for a refresher. Again, pretty straightforward fight. Now for the big one, the Reckoning fight. It is 3 waves. This is a really, really long fight. I think it's less tricky than Tier 1 overall, but it still has some quirks. And again, this fight is long. Wave 1 is the Kaiser boss with the metal giant dudes, and the orb is to take fire, thunder, water, or dark damage, and it gets +4 on the orb. You want to bring an enchanter or a damage dealer that does one of those elements, and you'll probably be fine. The orb isn't very threatening here as long as you're paying attention. It's got potentially dangerous HP attacks, but not a huge deal. Just play relatively safe. They turn green and need to be broken, otherwise you get blown up. Wave 2 gets a little bit more obnoxious. It is a single target lock Phoenix, and it's wholly absorbed because why not? It is a delay orb, +5 as they get delayed, just like the left crucible, and the orb goes away after it revives, but it gets stupidly tanky. It starts to HP regen after every turn after it revives, so you don't want it to act either. You want to burst and summon here, probably, because you don't want it getting turns in that second phase. Delay it as much as possible. And when it does get turns, it's not terribly threatening, but this wave just takes a while. Just don't let it act in that second part, and you should be good. On the last wave, it's the Parrots. It's the new boss, the featured one, the ones that are in the co-op and the challenge quest. There's 2 important things here. They gain a ton of powerful framed buffs at phases. It's best to load them up with framed debuffs, probably via calls, so you don't crowd up your stuff in the main party. And when they turn white, they get tankier, and if you heal, you actually take damage zombie style. Otherwise, this wave also isn't very threatening. They have AoE attacks, but just play like a normal, competent human being, and you should be good. Delaying them, obviously, not letting them get many turns is the operative strategy. And be sure to heal up. If you do end up healing during this phase, wait for it to be when they turn back to black again. Or if you have our HP regen, then just make sure to get it back once they turn black near the end of the fight. There's some weird interaction with Bosch here where I think it gets stuck in a loop. I don't know if that's fixed, but it's pretty funny. Look it up. Overall, the best units for this fight are definitely number 1 in the overall tier is Garland. Super MVP. The delays are always good. Let the bosses act less, you get messed up less. Less turns, less death. But especially wave 2, that delay is very crucial. Use him here if you have his burst. Even if you don't have his burst, you probably want to use him here anyways if you can pull it off like I did. Ignis is great, hitting weak damage, having stellar roll coverage, plus the high turn rate plays nicely with not letting bosses get turns. Faris can neuter the bosses pretty hard and make them less tanky, especially in the last wave. She blocks out their buffs. And again, I'd hope she'd be good here considering she's featured on the banner. Lightning, Terra, Tola are also very solid burst unit picks. I personally ran Onion Knight, which wasn't a common pick, but I did what I had to do, so you can make other stuff work that's not necessarily intuitive. For weak damage, Desch, Ignis, Faris, Mog are good recent picks. I guess Kuja as well. Ignis and Kryl as call abilities can potentially do it too with the right amount of team building. Delay, Garland is definitely MVP, but Lightning, Aranea, Ishtola can handle that as well. And the last wave debuff blocking can be accomplished via calls, but units like Amidatelion and Faris can work for it in and out of the party. It's definitely a lot easier to mix and match on this tier versus tier 1. Definitely a challenge, but a fun one, I think. I think they kind of hit right where the fight should be. It's just the fight is just really, really long. Who am I running here? Well, in JP, I did Onion Nightburst, Garland LD, and Ignis LD. Ended up working with some finesse once I truly understood the fight. Here, I'm going to be basic. Garland Burst, Ignis LD, Faris LD. Very basic, should handle the fight steadily. And that is it. Closing thoughts. This month probably isn't super exciting for people focused on meta outside of Terra and Garland and Young. If you're a Terra fan and you're excited, and if you're a Garland fan, you got some good stuff. But outside of that, it's all right. At least they padded it out with Abyss. I'm hyped for that because Abyss is always at least a nice little curveball. I hope they tune it up a little rather than pulling back on us. Some interesting copy paste to Lufenius would be nice. Maybe if they tweak him a little or give some interesting music on there at least. Anyways, what am I most excited for? Garland's burst, because it'll be finally in my hands because it's so entertaining. I love his burst phase. Garland is very funny. And my poll plans are Terra, Ami Deuce, Ignis LD, and then Faris LD, where I gun for Garland's burst as well. And that's it. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this video around, and comment about your plans. And I will be reading everything, so don't hesitate to ask anything. I'll catch you guys later. Happy polls. Good luck this month. This video is a little bit late. I had to stitch some of the other stuff in, but it's out now, and that's what matters. All right, I'll catch you guys later. Have a good one. Peace.